Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 225 of the Orange Pill Investor. And today I want to talk about the difference between buying shares on margin or buying long calls. And specifically, I would use either one of these instruments to sell covered calls against. If you buy a LEAPS, it's going to be considered a poor man's covered call. The long call actually acts as your collateral because you could exercise it to protect yourself. And some of this will overlap with my poor man's covered call tutorial that I'm going to record as well. But um, just going to compare like the returns on investment. TLDR, the returns are probably very similar, but the risks are completely different. So let's just take a look at the leaps or the long call. In general, 0.7 delta is probably the bare minimum that's relatively safe to sell covered calls against, but a 0.8 is pretty reasonable. Going all the way down to this 80 strike would get you to 0.87. That's also very good. Of course, you're going to pay a little more. So I'm just going to compare the 100 strike leaps. This is 364 days. So I guess it doesn't qualify as a leaps by 1 day. So maybe I should have made this video yesterday. But it's about half the price of the shares. So if you bought 100 shares in a cash account, not margin, it cost you $14,500, and you can buy this leaps for 7, and you can even buy the 80 strike for 81. So, really, if you wanted to compare apples to apples, buying this on margin at 50%, you could even go with this 90 strike, get a 0.84 delta here. But I did the 100. I like nice round numbers as well. And so I went to options profit calculator and I put in the 100 strikes. And let's just say by this, end of December-ish, the price rocketed and just doubled. So to 294. Your initial investment was the 7 grand, and now you can sell it for 20. So you're going to make 13. And the way that the margin calculation works, so if I wanted to buy 100 shares, the leaps lets you control 100 shares with the option. In order to control 100 shares on a approximately 50% margin, this has ended up being like 55% or something. I don't know if that's because I have so much MicroStrategy. They're charging me a little bit of a extra, or maybe they only do 45% margin. Either way, we're going to say that this is approximately the same price as buying the leaps. And in order to calculate your profits, if this were to double and this, the price goes to like 290, you can turn around and sell these 100 shares for 29,000, but you borrowed 8 to do it. So you paid half price for the first 50, or you paid full price for the first 50 shares, and you basically got the other 50 shares for free. So when you sell this, you have to settle up. And so if you sell this for 29 and you borrowed, half of that, let's just do easy math, 30. If the price of MicroStrategy was 150, you sell for 30, you got to pay back the 7,500. So that would leave you with like 22. So whether you're going to make, and that was actually overinflated, so it's probably 20 or 21. So the profits actually are very similar. You're going to shell out a very similar amount of money, and all said and done, you're going to come out with a similar, balance at the end. So what is the decision-making process? Well, in a margin account, it's all good to say, okay, well, if I invest 7,500, and the stock doubles, I can triple my money because I only paid 7,500 and I end up with like 21. But if the price of MicroStrategy gets cut in half, you can actually lose more money than you actually started with, because if the price drops from 150 to 75, now you can only sell it for 7,500. But if you paid 8,000 for it, or let's just say the price dropped down to 50, you can only sell it for 5,000, but you actually borrowed 8 from your exchange, and you still owe them the 8 grand, even though you can only sell $50 a share MicroStrategy for 5 grand. That results in what's called a margin call. So you can get completely liquidated. You can actually end up with less money than you start with. Normally, if you buy 100 shares of something on a cash account, and even if they go bankrupt and the price goes to zero, you just lose what you started with. All you can do is just go broke. You can't actually go into debt. But on margin, you can actually owe them more than you started with. And if you don't have funds outside of your account to deposit, then your margin call liquidates you and you still owe them some more money. So that is not a risk with this. Holy crap. With the leaps, as long as you're trading in a cash account, because the worst that can happen is that the company goes bankrupt and you lose the entire investment. But buying a leaps, you're not going to lose more than you actually shelled out, unless your exchange actually lets you buy these on margin, and then you're you know you're probably playing with even more fire. So as far as I can tell, the returns are very similar, but the risk of margin seems to be a little bit greater. But if you're in a cash account and you can't trade with margin, then leaps could get you more. If a stock does appreciate, then buying the leaps is going to let your money go farther. But just keep in mind, when you are leveraged to the upside, you are also leveraged to the downside. And so if MicroStrategy crashes by 25%, the value of this leaps will probably crash by 50. So you make double the returns, but you lose twice as much in as far as the losses are concerned. But trading in a cash account with leaps, at least you're not going to suffer a margin call. The other element to that is that buying shares have no expiration date. So you don't really need the stock to do anything right away. But with these leaps, if the price of the stock stays at, right now where they are, 145, then it does not take very long to get into the red where you're already losing money. The price of the stock has to go up very soon, and it has to keep going up just to stay in the green. But if you buy shares on margin and the price just trades sideways for 2 years, then you don't earn nothing, but you don't lose anything either. So buying leaps has a little bit of urgency to it that buying shares on margin doesn't have. So everything has trade-offs. Thomas Sowell, one of my favorite quotes is, "There are no solutions, only trade-offs." And those are the major trade-offs that I see. I do employ both of these strategies. I purchase shares on margin, and in my IRA, I also do poor man's covered calls. Since IRAs are cash accounts, I have some shares and I do have some leaps, and I sell covered calls against both. I think that's all I wanted to get in here. The other poor man's covered call tutorial will discuss how to, select the leaps, and then how to construct the strikes on your covered call to have a quote unquote safe poor man's covered call. And then I will also go over the danger in early exercise that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. I wasn't aware of it really until a guy that I follow named Coach Mac pointed it out, and it's absolutely critical to understand that piece of it, because even though you form the poor man's covered call safely, if the price goes, really rallies quick and you get exercised on, and then you're forced to exercise back, you lose all of the extrinsic value in that option. So if that interests you, stay tuned for that, and be good, y'all.